For decades, men over 50 have faced a breakfast dilemma, the fear that a simple egg could be a heart health hazard. That old narrative about cholesterol has created a lingering hesitation, making us question a natural, nutrient-dense food. But the science has shifted. While old models linked dietary cholesterol directly to heart danger, updated research tells a different story. In reality, your liver intelligently regulates cholesterol production, adjusting to what you eat to maintain a healthy balance. I'm here to clear the confusion with clinical evidence that dismantles these decades of fear. The relief comes when you understand what the latest studies actually show for male health after 35. Eggs are a powerhouse of protein, healthy fats, vitamin D, and choline, all essential for your hormonal and cardiovascular health. From brain function to testosterone support, these nutrients work together to nourish your body at a cellular level. Maybe you've cut back on eggs because you were told they would block your arteries. Maybe you feel a little guilty every time you eat more than 2. Or maybe you've heard the opposite, that eggs boost testosterone, and now you're confused because social media gives you 15 different claims in 10 seconds. You deserve clarity, not fear. And today, I want to give you exactly that. Here's what the research now shows. Eggs are one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, and the relationship between dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol is far more complex and far more forgiving than we were once taught. Harvard, Mayo Clinic, and large NIH-backed studies have re-examined egg consumption in relation to heart disease, metabolic health, inflammation, and even hormonal balance, and the findings may genuinely surprise you. But beyond the headlines, there is something more personal here. For many men, food choices are not just about health. They're about identity, energy, confidence, and performance. When you're dealing with low libido, prostate issues, softer erections, or lower testosterone, every nutrition choice can feel high stakes. So, today, let's break this down the same way I would with a patient sitting across from me in the clinic, calmly, simply, and with real data. No fear-mongering, no social media myths, just what the evidence actually says about how many eggs you can safely eat per day for your heart, hormones, metabolism, and long-term sexual vitality. By the end of this consultation, you'll walk away with clarity, confidence, and a way to make this decision based on science, not outdated beliefs. Most men who ask, "How many eggs can I safely eat per day?" are really asking something deeper. Will eggs raise my cholesterol and put my heart at risk? And it makes sense. For more than 40 years, dietary cholesterol was blamed as the primary driver of high LDL, but here's what the research shows today. Your body is far more intelligent, adaptive, and self-regulating than those old guidelines ever acknowledged. Think of cholesterol regulation like a thermostat. When the thermostat senses more warmth in the room, it doesn't keep heating, it adjusts. Your liver works the same way. When you consume more cholesterol from foods like eggs, the liver typically compensates by producing less of its own. This is why multiple modern studies, including those from Harvard School of Public Health, Mayo Clinic, and NIH-funded trials, have found that for most people, eating eggs does not lead to a harmful rise in blood cholesterol. In fact, several randomized controlled trials show something surprising. Eggs often raise HDL, the good cholesterol, while having minimal impact on LDL particles. And when LDL does rise slightly in some individuals, it's often the larger buoyant LDL particles that are considered far less atherogenic than the small dense ones associated with cardiovascular risk. That nuance was missing from the old fear-based story. This is something I see frequently in my practice. A man in his late 40s will come in worried because he loves eggs. Maybe he's trying to eat better, boost his protein intake, or support testosterone naturally, but he's terrified they're damaging his arteries. After reviewing his labs, his lifestyle, and his metabolic picture, the truth usually becomes clearer. The real drivers of his cholesterol patterns are insulin resistance, low physical activity, poor sleep, and genetics, not eggs. Let's break this down like I would with a patient. If someone's lipid panel shows high triglycerides, low HDL, elevated blood sugar, and central weight gain, then the issue isn't the eggs, it's metabolic health. And interestingly, studies show that a high-protein, nutrient-dense breakfast that includes eggs can improve satiety, stabilize blood sugar, and support insulin sensitivity. When metabolic stress decreases, cholesterol metabolism often improves as a downstream effect. Now, there are exceptions, and it's important to acknowledge them. Roughly 15 to 25% of people are hyper-responders, meaning their LDL rises more noticeably when they eat cholesterol-rich foods. Even then, research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition indicates that the increase is often accompanied by a rise in HDL and a shift toward larger, less harmful LDL particles, not necessarily an increased cardiovascular risk. These are details that headlines rarely explain clearly. Think of eggs not as a dangerous food, but as a concentrated package of bioavailable protein, B vitamins, choline for brain and liver function, lutein for eye health, and amino acids that support tissue repair. All wrapped in a nutrient ratio that human physiology handles quite gracefully. Your body doesn't treat an egg the way it treats processed meats or refined sugars. The metabolic response is completely different. So the first truth is this: eggs themselves are not the villain. The relationship between dietary cholesterol and heart disease is influenced by your genetics, your metabolic condition, your physical activity, and the overall pattern of your diet, not by the presence of a few yolks on your breakfast plate. When men ask me about eggs, there's always another question hiding underneath. Do eggs help or hurt my testosterone? And it's completely understandable. After age 35, testosterone begins to decline slowly but steadily, about 1% per year on average. Men notice it in subtle ways. Morning erections become softer or less consistent. Energy dips more easily. Stress feels heavier. And recovery isn't what it used to be. So, every nutrition choice feels like it could either support your hormones or harm them. Here's what the research shows. Eggs are one of the most hormone-up supportive foods you can include in your diet. Not because they magically boost testosterone, but because they supply the raw materials your body needs to make hormones in a stable, sustainable way. To understand why, think of testosterone synthesis like building a house. You need skilled workers, you need time, and you need the right materials. One of those materials is dietary cholesterol, the literal biochemical backbone of steroid hormones, including testosterone, DHT, and cortisol. But your body doesn't just use any cholesterol. It uses cholesterol delivered in a way it can absorb efficiently. Eggs provide that in its most natural bioavailable form. Several studies, including those referenced by Harvard's Nutrition Department and NIH-supported metabolic research, show that dietary cholesterol does not worsen hormonal profiles in men and may actually help stabilize them when paired with good sleep, strength training, and adequate protein intake. What I see in my practice mirrors this. When a man increases high-quality protein sources like eggs, his energy improves, his mood steadies, his recovery strengthens, and over time, those are the conditions under which testosterone thrives. Eggs also contain B vitamins, especially B12 and riboflavin, which support mitochondrial function, the energy engines inside your cells, and testosterone is deeply connected to mitochondrial health. Think of mitochondria as the power plants of hormone production. When they're well-fed, hormones flow more smoothly. When they're starving, everything slows. There's another important nutrient in eggs that often gets overlooked: choline. Choline is vital for brain function, liver detoxification, and acetylcholine synthesis, a neurotransmitter involved in nerve conduction, pelvic floor function, and even sexual arousal. Many men over 40 are actually choline deficient without realizing it, especially if they avoid egg yolks. Restoring that nutrient alone can improve clarity, focus, and metabolic resilience. But does that mean more eggs always leads to more testosterone? Not exactly. Nutrition is only one part of the hormonal ecosystem. Stress management, resistance training, deep sleep, and reducing visceral fat matter even more. What eggs do is support the foundation. They make sure your body has the materials it needs so the rest of your lifestyle efforts can work more effectively. If you're someone trying to improve testosterone naturally, one of the simplest steps you can take is to upgrade your first meal of the day. Many men skip breakfast or grab something sugary because they're rushing. But creating a morning routine that includes high-protein, nutrient-dense foods, eggs, Greek yogurt, oats, fruit, nuts, can help regulate blood sugar, stabilize cortisol, and give your hormonal system the steady base it craves. And if you're watching this because you're trying to rebuild your energy, libido, or vitality after a stressful period, pause here and remind yourself, it's common and it's treatable. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Sometimes the first step is as simple as building one strong meal each day and letting that anchor ripple outward. When it comes to eggs and heart health, the fear is deeply rooted. For decades, heart disease campaigns simplified the narrative. Cholesterol equals danger, and eggs became the symbolic cholesterol bomb. But when you look carefully at modern research from Harvard Mayo Clinic, the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, and large NIH-backed cohorts, a much more nuanced, much more reassuring picture emerges. Let's break this down the same way I would if you were sitting across from me in the clinic. The first thing I'd tell you is this. Cardiovascular risk is not determined by a single food. It's determined by patterns. Your metabolic health, your genetics, your inflammation levels, your lifestyle. You could eat 0 eggs and still struggle with high LDL if you're sedentary, stressed, inflamed, or insulin resistant. You could eat eggs daily and have an excellent lipid profile if your metabolism is stable and your lifestyle is supportive. One of the most important findings in recent years is that cholesterol in food has a much smaller effect on blood cholesterol than previously believed. For most men, the liver compensates, producing less cholesterol when more is consumed. That's why the dietary guidelines for Americans removed the previous cholesterol limit in 2015. The science simply didn't support it anymore. But there's another piece to the puzzle. LDL quality matters more than LDL quantity. Not all LDL particles behave the same. The small dense particles are the ones that slip into artery walls more easily. The large buoyant LDL particles are far less harmful. Multiple controlled trials show that for most people eating eggs may slightly raise LDL, but the increase is primarily in the larger LDL particles while also raising HDL. That shift tends to improve the overall lipid pattern, not worsen it. Think of it like this. If LDL particles were cars on a highway, small, dense LDL is the reckless sports car weaving through traffic. Large, buoyant LDL is the slow-moving truck that stays in its lane. Eggs tend to increase the trucks, not the reckless drivers. Now, does this apply to everyone? No. And this is where personalized medicine matters. About 15 to 25% of people are hyper-responders. Their LDL rises more noticeably when they consume dietary cholesterol. Even then, research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition shows that their HDL often rises too, and inflammatory markers typically do not worsen. Still, these are men who deserve a personalized approach. More fiber, more omega-3s, more exercise, and slightly more caution with high cholesterol foods. If a patient tells me he eats eggs daily and his LDL is still elevated, I don't automatically blame the eggs. I look at the broader picture. Are his triglycerides high? Is his waist circumference growing? Is his blood sugar elevated? These metabolic signs are far more predictive of cardiovascular risk than how many yolks he eats each morning. Here's another often missed point. Eggs are usually eaten with other foods. A plate of eggs with vegetables and whole grains behaves very differently in the body than eggs with processed meats, fried oils, and refined carbs. The company eggs keep matters. So the truth is this. Most men can eat eggs regularly without harming their heart, and for many, it can be part of a heart-healthy, nutrient-dense pattern. The fear came from older science that didn't account for particle size, metabolic health, or dietary context. When you view the modern data together, eggs simply don't deserve the villain role they were given. When men over 35 start paying attention to their health, one of the most important and often overlooked areas is metabolic stability. This includes blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, morning cortisol patterns, and the ability to maintain healthy weight without constant struggle. And this is where eggs become far more than a simple breakfast food. They become a metabolic tool. Here's what the research shows. High-protein, nutrient-dense breakfasts, especially those containing eggs, support better blood sugar control, steadier energy, and improved appetite regulation throughout the day. Studies from the University of Missouri and trials published in Nutrition Research found that eating eggs in the morning reduced ghrelin, your hunger hormone, and improved satiety compared to cereal, toast, or even purely carbohydrate-based traditional breakfasts. Think of it like putting logs on a fire instead of paper. Logs burn evenly and keep the flame stable. Paper flares up, burns fast, and leaves you hungry again in an hour. This is something I see every week in clinic. A man comes in frustrated because he's eating light in the morning, maybe just tea and biscuits or fruit or a quick cereal, but he's exhausted by mid-morning, craving sugar by 2 p.m., and overeating at night. His metabolism isn't broken. He's just fueling it in a way that spikes and crashes his blood sugar repeatedly. When we switch his breakfast to a protein-rich structure, eggs, Greek yogurt, nuts, vegetables, suddenly his energy stabilizes, his evening cravings soften, and his waistline starts shifting without dramatic dieting. Eggs have a unique advantage here because of their amino acid profile. They contain all 9 essential amino acids in ideal ratios for muscle repair and metabolic regulation. For men who are lifting weights, managing stress, or simply trying to maintain lean mass as they age, this matters more than they realize. Muscle tissue is one of the strongest protectors against insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and hormonal decline, and protein-rich foods like eggs make it easier to preserve that muscle. Another major benefit is blood sugar control. Multiple randomized trials, including NIH-supported metabolic studies, show that eating eggs at breakfast significantly reduces post-meal glucose spikes. For men who are pre-diabetic or experiencing early insulin resistance, which is extremely common after 40, this alone can dramatically improve overall metabolic health. Over time, better insulin sensitivity doesn't just reduce diabetes risk, it also lowers inflammation, stabilizes mood, improves sexual function, and supports healthier testosterone levels. Now, does this mean everyone should eat eggs every morning? Not necessarily. Metabolism thrives on patterns and consistency, but it also benefits from dietary variety. What matters most is that your first meal of the day anchors your system instead of destabilizing it. It should have protein, healthy fats, fiber, and something that keeps you full, and eggs fit effortlessly into that structure. If you've been trying to lose weight, regain energy, or reduce midday crashes, consider this a gentle encouragement. Upgrade your morning routine. Build a breakfast that works for your body, not against it. And if you're watching this because you felt stuck or frustrated with your metabolism, remember it's common and it's treatable. Your body isn't failing, it's simply waiting for a more supportive rhythm. Eggs can be part of that rhythm, helping you stabilize the entire hormonal metabolic ecosystem that drives your energy, appetite, and performance throughout the day. For many men over 40, there's a quiet concern that lingers in the background of every health decision. Will this affect my prostate? It's understandable. The prostate becomes more sensitive with age, influenced by hormones, inflammation, diet, sleep, and circulation. And because eggs contain choline, past headlines misinterpreted some early observational studies and created fear around eggs and prostate cancer. So, let's break this down carefully and compassionately the way I would with a patient sitting in front of me. First, here's the truth grounded in current research. Eggs do not increase prostate cancer risk in healthy men. The old fear began with small observational studies that showed men with advanced prostate cancer tended to consume more choline-rich foods after diagnosis. But the studies never established that choline caused the cancer, only that men who were already ill may have been eating more nutrients for recovery, or that more aggressive cancers alter choline metabolism. Harvard's updated analyses, along with multiple large cohort reviews published in journals like Cancer Epidemiology and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, found no causal link between egg consumption and prostate cancer development. Think of it like seeing more umbrellas on the street during rainstorms. The umbrellas don't cause the rain, they just happen to show up at the same time. Now, let's talk about inflammation, the real driver of prostate discomfort, urinary symptoms, and hormonal imbalance in many men over 50. Eggs don't promote inflammation. In fact, they contain lutein and zeaxanthin, which are antioxidant compounds. Several clinical studies show neutral or even slightly anti-inflammatory effects when eggs are consumed within a balanced diet. What does increase inflammation? Sedentary lifestyles, poor sleep, visceral fat, and high-sugar diets. The same factors that also worsen sexual function and testosterone levels. Here's where eggs become surprisingly helpful. Choline, the nutrient that caused so much misunderstanding, is essential for liver health, methylation, cellular repair, and acetylcholine production. Methylation affects hormone balance, detoxification, and DNA repair. All crucial processes for aging men. Acetylcholine supports nerve conduction, bladder function, and even pelvic floor coordination. Many men with urinary frequency, weak stream, or chronic pelvic tension actually benefit from improved neuromuscular signaling, and choline plays a supporting role in that ecosystem. And then there's protein quality. As men age, they naturally lose muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia. That loss contributes to inflammation, insulin resistance, weight gain, weaker erections, and reduced testosterone. Eggs supply high-quality protein that helps preserve lean tissue, which in turn improves metabolic stability and reduces prostate stress indirectly. I often tell my patients to think of their prostate not as a fragile organ that needs to be protected from individual foods, but as a living tissue influenced by the entire environment of the body. When inflammation is low, circulation is strong, hormones are steady, muscle mass is maintained, and metabolic health is stable, the prostate tends to be calmer, healthier, and less symptomatic. So, the idea that eggs harm the prostate simply does not hold up under modern scientific review. The bigger picture matters far more. Are you staying active, managing stress, sleeping well, resistance training, and eating whole foods? In that context, eggs are not a threat. They're a nutrient-dense ally. Now that we've explored cholesterol, hormones, metabolism, and prostate health, we can finally answer the question that brought you here. How many eggs can you safely eat per day? And the answer is far more personalized and far more reassuring than most people expect. Here's what the research shows when you look at high-quality data from Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, NIH-backed meta-analyses, and long-term population studies. For most healthy men, eating 1 to 3 eggs per day is not only safe, but potentially beneficial as part of a balanced whole food diet. That range consistently appears in large clinical studies examining heart disease, metabolic outcomes, and inflammation markers. Men who eat eggs regularly within that bandwidth show no increased cardiovascular risk, especially when the rest of their diet is reasonable and their metabolic health is cared for. Think of it this way. Most men can include eggs as a daily nutrient source without worrying that they're quietly damaging their heart or hormones. The old fear simply isn't supported by modern physiology, but there's a second layer to this: metabolic individuality. Not everyone responds the same way to cholesterol, fat, or protein intake, and your body gives you signals. When I work with patients, I assess egg tolerance in the context of LDL levels and particle size, triglycerides and HDL, waist circumference and visceral fat, blood sugar stability, genetics like APOE variants, overall diet quality. For men with stable metabolic health, good HDL, and normal triglycerides, 2 to 3 eggs daily is perfectly fine and may support hormone production, satiety, muscle repair, and overall vitality. For men with early insulin resistance, prediabetes, or extra visceral fat, eggs can actually help by improving morning blood sugar control and appetite regulation. In these cases, 1 to 2 eggs per day, especially when paired with vegetables and fiber, can be part of a metabolic healing strategy. For the smaller group of hyperresponders whose LDL rises more sharply with cholesterol intake, eggs aren't automatically off the table. These men often still do well with 3 to 6 eggs per week while increasing fiber, omega-3s, and exercise to balance lipid patterns. The key here is personalization, not fear. And then there's dietary context. Eating 3 eggs with spinach, avocado, and whole grain toast is very different from eating 3 eggs with processed meats cooked in industrial oils. The plate matters just as much as the food itself. Think of your daily egg intake like tuning an instrument. Your body gives you feedback. Your labs give you feedback. Your energy, satiety, and digestion give you feedback. When all those pieces line up, stable energy, consistent appetite, good mood, healthy labs, that's your personalized egg intake. So, here is your science-backed guideline summarized simply. For most men, 35 to 70 with average metabolic health, 1 to 3 eggs per day is safe. For men with excellent metabolic markers and active lifestyles, up to 3 to 4 eggs per day is still supported by research. For hyper-responders or men with high LDLP, 3 to 6 eggs per week personalized with your physician. No fear, no myths, just physiology. The goal isn't to obsess over the exact number. It's to understand what your body needs and respond intelligently. And when you have the right information, you can make those decisions confidently instead of anxiously.